Morning. As we go to the chitas of the day, we are second. We are holding in Chumash the second reading of the parsha. Sorry, today is Tuesday. We're holding the third reading of parsha, which is on chapter 2, verse number 11. And it came in those days, Vayigdal and Moshe grew up. And he went out to his brothers, to see in their burdens. Ish Mitzri, and behold, he saw a man, an Egyptian man, Makesh Ivri, that was beating up a Jewish man, Me'echov, on his brothers. So Rashi says, wasn't it already written that he grew up? So what do you mean that suddenly he grew up in verse 11? So the Rashi says, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Eloi, said, the first by Yigdal, that says in the previous verse, he grew up in height. He grew in stature. And the second was in greatness, because Pharaoh appointed him over his house. So Moshe Rabbeinu became a leader in Pharaoh's house. Nevertheless, he directed his eyes and his heart to be distressed over them, over what's happening to the Jewish people. So then he saw Ish Mitzri. He was a taskmaster appointed over the Israelites officers. He would wake them up when the rooster crowed and call them to their work. So this guy was going after one of the taskmasters, Malkiv Eidei, who was lashing and driving him. And he, the Hebrew man, was the husband of Shelamit. So the Medrash says that this was the husband of a woman who was called Shelamit Bas Divri. So she was a beautiful woman. And this guy, this Egyptian, laid his eyes on her. So he woke up the husband at night and took him out of his house. And then he returned and entered the house and was intimate with his wife, while she thought it was her husband. The man returned home and became aware of the matter. When the Egyptians saw they become aware of the matter, he struck him and drove him, or he started to whip him and put him into a lot of tzar. Also, Moshe Rabbeinu turned this way and he turned that way. He saw nobody was around. And he hit this Egyptian and he killed him. And he hit him in the sand. So that says, why do you have to say turn this way and that way? Moshe Rabbeinu saw what this guy did in the house, and what he did in the field. He saw that he was a terrible man. He raped a woman, and he saw what he's just beating up, being aggressive. Well, if he pshutik mashmayin, according to the simple meaning, he looked to see if nobody was around, basically. And he saw there was no man. So now she goes again to teach us that this means he saw that no man will come out of this guy. Asid Lasim this guy. Even if this guy would convert, nothing would come out of him. So he therefore basically was in essence saw that he can kill him. So he killed him. And we'll soon see how he killed him. Then the next day, Moshe Rabbeinu again came out to see what was happening. Behold, there were two Jews, Nitzim. There were two Jews that were arguing. Very unusual thing. But suddenly he saw two Jews arguing. And he said to the wicked one, Lama Sakareyecha, why are you hitting your brother? So Rashi says, The Medrash tells us who these two guys were. These are two famous guys who we're going to hear in the future many times. Dasan Aviram. This was the two guys, Dasan and Aviram. Haim Sheisidim and Ammon, they also left over later on with the situation of the man. They left over food in the field. Nitzim, Marivim, they were fighting. Lama Saka, why did you hit him? Who said he hit him? Although he did not strike him, he's called wicked, merely by raising his hand to strike him. The Gemara says that in Sanhedrin. Re'acha, why are you hitting your best friend? Rasha k'maischa, you're both wicked. Moshe Rabbeinu knew these two guys who would make him tzaddis until the story of Korach, which ultimately they died by the story of Korach, Dasan and Aviram, which is many more years later, that ultimately that they perished in the story of Korach and his followers. Verse 14, Vayemer, so he said to him, Ish, who made you a prince? Who are you? Are you plan to slay us as you did? Are you going to kill us like you killed the Mitzri? Moshe became frightened. He said, indeed, the matter has become known. So Rashi explains, we're still a young guy. He's 18, 19 years old. Are you coming to kill us? See, it's a very interesting word over here. The Torah puts a word in oimer. Oimer means to say, meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu killed him with a word. Mikan on the lane, Rashi says, Shahargu b'shem ha'meferish. Moshe Rabbeinu killed him with saying God's name. That's why it says, Agenu ata oimer. Are you going to kill us like you killed him with a word? Here you see Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, even when he was a young man, that he can kill a guy with saying the name of God. You don't have to touch him. Vayira Moshe, and Moshe was frightened. Kipshute, simple meaning. He was frightened. These guys are going to go and tell the king. But the Medrash says, Vayira, he was frightened of what the situation of the Jewish people were. Midrashically, it is interpreted meant that he worried because he saw in Israel wicked men. He said, wow, look what's going on with this nation. They have wicked people. He said, this so perhaps is why the Jews do not deserve to be redeemed, because there's wicked people in their midst. And that's what Rashi continues in the next statement. Indeed, the matter is become known to be interpreted according to its apparent meaning. That it was known that he is slain. Now they're going to tell everybody. But the continuation of the Medrash, however, and the Medrash interprets, however, is the matter I was wondering about. I was wondering all these years, why do the Jews, why are they in exile? Why are the Israelis considered more sinful than the 70 nations in the world? To be subjugated with back-breaking labor has become known to me. Now I realize why the Jewish people are suffering, because there's wicked people in their midst. This is a very powerful, it's one of the, Moshe Rabbeinu was later challenged by God on this, that he's judging the Jewish people. And he's being too judgmental. Moshe Rabbeinu was a man of justice, and on the one hand, and over here you can see his justice, that he felt that the Jewish people were not being holy enough. But ultimately, as we'll learn later, Moshe Rabbeinu transformed himself to be the most greatest lover of Jews and protector of the Jewish nation, even of those who were sinners in the Jewish nation. So we know that Moshe Rabbeinu ultimately became the most greatest advocate for the Jewish people. But over here, he expressed himself in the beginning as a wonderment. Vayishma Paro Dov, verse 15, and Paro heard about it. Vayivakish laharigas Moshe. He decided, guy's a murderer. He murdered an Egyptian officer. So he tried to kill him. Vayivrach Moshe Rabbeinu had to run away. Vayeshev be'eretz Midian, and he stayed in the land of Midian. Vayeshev abei, and he went to sat down on a well. Now over here, let's tell you that this verse 15, goes from Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not sure, I can look it up exactly. Moshe Rabbeinu is 17, 18 years old. And at the end of the verse, he's 75. So there's a big empty space in between this verse. There's a good 50 years, 60 years that is in this verse that we don't know. The Torah doesn't tell us what you have to go to the Medrash and stuff. Where was Moshe? Some say he was in Ethiopia, he became a king in Ethiopia. There's a whole many Midrashim. And what did Moshe Rabbeinu do from his teenage years until he came to the Be'er in Midian, when he met his future bride and his father-in-law Yitro? So we go from when he runs away from Egypt, a young lad, a teenager, he's 17, 18 years old, till he's now 75. Boom, he's 75 years old. They informed the Pharaoh. So the Pharaoh decided, he delivered him to executioners to execute him. The problem was they couldn't execute him. Because the Medrash says, but the sword had no power over him. That's why it says later, he saved me from the Pharaoh's sword. It says that it's later on. So what happened was they hit his neck, and his neck turned into like a piece of rock. Yeshiv at Midian, and he tarried there. He came to Midian. So an expression of sitting, he learned from Jacob, who met his mate at a well. So Moshe Rabbeinu, that was the dating place of the patriarchs. They always went to a well. The comment of the sentence stayed in the land of Midian does not appear. Some editions of Rashi, therefore it's enclosed in. Okay, this is something else. Let's go weiter. Lakoyim Midian, and to the chief of Midian, to the priest of Midian. Sheva Bonas, he had 7 daughters. He only had daughters. And they came to draw water, and they filled it of water for their father's flock. Midian, the most important prominent among them, he had abandoned idolatry, so they abandoned him with them. So the Midian, we know Yisro was a searching man, a searching soul, and he ultimately dropped paganism. And that time, if you drop paganism, people didn't have anything to do you. As Ratim, pools of running water made in the ground. So that's why when shepherds came and they saw the daughters of Midian, and they drove them away. So Moshe Rabbeinu again. Here we see Moshe Rabbeinu in the course of today's reading. Moshe Rabbeinu continues to stand up for injustice. The Egyptian hitting the Jew, the 2 Jews hitting each other, and now the story of Yisro's daughters, and he always stands up for justice. He gets involved, even though to his own detriment, he gets involved, right? He was in the palaces, he was a prince. Why did he have to get involved in other people's things? But that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is a man of justice, and when he sees injustice happening, he does something. So they drove him away. They started driving away because they were excommunicated, the family. But Moshe Rabbeinu stood up for them. He didn't know them. But then they came home. So Yisai said to them, you see, Yisai had many names. One of his names was Ruel. Why'd you come so fast? So they said, Ish Mitzi, that there was some Egyptian man at the well. There was some Egyptian guy hanging out there. But God, not only did he help us, he helped us even to draw the water. He watered the flock, so that's why we did this pretty quickly. So he said to his daughters, where is he? Have you left the man? The guy did you a favor, you didn't invite him home. Go call him. Go call him back. Let him come eat bread. So Rashi says, Lama Zaftem. Because they told him that not only why did you come so quickly, because the second he came to the well, the water came up. A miracle happened, the water came up. When he heard that, Yisrael, he said, wow, I remember somebody who had that power, Yaakov Avinu. That's why Yisrael was one of the ministers of the Pharaoh. So that's why it was another reason why he was excommunicated, because he was thrown away from the Pharaoh. We'll learn another time, another Rashi. Yisrael was one of the ministers of the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh asked, what should we do? Yisrael said, don't do that. Don't put the Jews in slavery. And he was against slavery. And they threw him out of the court. So now he's like living in Midian. He was excommunicated from the Pharaoh, excommunicated from the court. But he knew because he knew Jacob's family. So he knew the family already. So here comes Yaakov. So Yisrael knew, wait a second, I know this guy. I know his family. He must be for Yaakov. He must be the Jewish person. So call him in. Let him come eat bread. Listen, he had 7 daughters. They were all excommunicated. So maybe one of them will marry him. Maybe he'll marry one of you. And it says, except from the bread he ate. So that's the expression. Is he'll marry one of you. So that's exactly what happened. Moshe Rabbeinu consented to stay with this man, because Moshe Rabbeinu was also a wandering guy. They were both banished from the Pharaoh, Moshe Rabbeinu and Yisrael. They were fugitives, running away. So he said, listen, stay with us. And he gave him his daughter. And now Moshe Rabbeinu got married. So Rashi the male renders Vatziv is similar. So you have the Vayoel, interesting expression. Therefore, Rashi said, the Medrash says Vayoel, an expression of an oath. He made a vow. The Moshe swore to him that he would not move from Midian except with his consent. Moshe Rabbeinu said, listen, you know what? You're going to be nice to me. I'm itchy to go back to Egypt because my whole family is in Egypt. But I'll make a deal with you. I will not leave Midian until you consent, you give me permission. And that's why later the Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked from his father-in-law permission to go back to Mitzrayim. Atela ben, and he had a son, Vatikish Gershon. He had a son, he called him Gershon. He said, I was a stranger in a foreign land. And it came to pass that the king of Egypt died. And the children of Egypt sighed from their labor. And they called out, and their cries ascended to God from the labor. So it came to many days that when Moshe was living in Midian, the king of Egypt died, and the Jewish people needed salvation. And Moshe Rabbeinu was pastor. He was busy being a pastor, flock, being a shepherd, and the salvation came through him. That's what's going to happen. So he's busy with his flock in Midian, and the Jewish people are sitting in Mitzrayim crying out for him to come. Therefore, the sections were connected. They go one with the other. By Yamas Mel Mitzrayim. So Rashi says the Medrash says he didn't die. He was stricken with leprosy. And he would take Jewish children and cut them. They told him the way you're going to be cured is if you bathe in blood. So every night he would slaughter a bunch of people, a bunch of Jewish kids to fill his bath with blood. Imagine. So this is a great, suddenly is a great sad to the Jewish nation. By Yishmael Akim es Nakasam, and God heard their cry. By Yiskel Akim es Brisai, and God remembered the covenant as Avram, as Yitzhak, as Yaakov, the covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As Bris Avram, as she says, Im Avram, with Avram. Vayar Elokim es Bnei Yisrael, and God saw the children of Israel. Vayed Elokim, and God knew. So Rashi says this is all a expression of focusing his attention, so to say, upon them. He did not conceal his eyes from them. And that completes the Chumash of today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. Alter Rebbe, we're in chapter 10 of Tanya. And Alter Rebbe is talking about the concept of a righteous man, a tzaddik. And not just the concept of a righteous man, a tzaddik, because we learned in the beginning of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe brings a Gemara that there are two basic levels of tzaddikim. Tzaddik Gomer, complete tzaddik, which the Gemara calls a tzaddik v'toivloi, a tzaddik that only has good. And then there's a tzaddik she'eino gomer, is an incomplete tzaddik, which is considered a tzaddik. Gemara, the Talmud calls it a tzaddik v'raloi, a tzaddik that has ra, that still has ra loi, but it's totally in control of him, within him. So the Alter Rebbe just said that in that level, the second level of tzaddik v'raloi, not a complete tzaddik, there are many levels, and there are many people. It could be thousands upon thousands of such kind of tzaddikim. But the first level of tzaddik is a very tight group. The first level of tzaddikim, as I mentioned, could be 36, in the Zohar, 36, 72, whatever, or ultimately maybe one. And they are called in the Zohar B'nei Aliyah. They are called the sons of Aliyah, the sons of highly uplifting. So these are very special people. So the Alter Rebbe again is going to emphasize what the greatness of such kind of people are. What means a tzaddik, a real tzaddik? And that is, Alter Rebbe said, why they're called. Another reason for the designation of B'nei Aliyah, sons of uplifting, sons of holiness. Because you have to understand that these people, when they do good, when they do good, even the aspect of Torah mitzvahs, it's only for God. It's even in their spiritual service, it's not for their spiritual service. They don't even have any spiritual delight. They don't even have their own spiritual delight. They only do it for God. They have not a selfish entity in themselves, not even a spiritual selfish, not even a godly self. They have lost themselves. In Chassidus, that's called bittul b'mitzias, self-nullification, not about self. That's why you can understand Avraham Avinu. When God asked Avraham Avinu to take his son and to bring him a sacrifice, Avram says, Hineni, because it's not about himself. Even his spiritual self. Avram Avinu, God told him, this child will be your future of the Jewish nation. And then he tells him, take him and bring him as a sacrifice. That's not only a contradiction of the selfishness of wanting a child and needing and not, God forbid, hurting a child. That's even the negating the spiritual self. So that means it's going to come an end to the Jewish nation. So even that concept that Avram Avinu says Hineni is you can understand, you're talking here about a person who has no self. Whatever the Eibishter wants, that's what I want. Even though it's in essence self-negating, even spiritual self-negation. Not for his not even his spiritual service. It has nothing to do with his godly soul. It has to do with God, not about self. I'll give you another example of Rabbi Akiva. That when they were killing Rabbi Akiva, and he was having a very painful death by the Romans, he was smiling, the Gemara says, and his student said, how are you happy at this moment? He says, I was waiting to do a mitzvah my whole life, Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God's name, and now I'm doing this mitzvah. I should be in pain. I'm here to do a mitzvah. And if it means myself that I'm going to, in essence, be killed, Hineni, I'm going to do the mitzvah with joy. These are very, very high people. These are extremely, extremely holy individuals that are above and beyond most people's imagination. And therefore, it's not your obligation. But you should know that the Eibishter planted such people in this world. Tzaddikim, complete tzaddikim, totally complete tzaddikim, without a selfless bone in the body. Again, even spiritual selfishness, not for the physical pleasure, for the spiritual pleasure. It's not about them. They don't want. He'd say the Alter Rebbe would always express himself. He would say in a song, he would say, "I don't want your Gan Eden. I don't want your gifts. I don't want your prom. I want you. I want you. So I don't need Gan Eden. I don't need all your rewards. I want you. I want you." That's a tzaddik. A tzaddik has no personal, you're going to give me, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to accomplish things. Great. So wonderful, but I'm here to serve you. To fulfill the thirst of the soul, which thirsts for God. So the divine service of tzaddikim in the lower level may indeed be for the purpose of stilling their thirst of God and the desire to cleave to Him. For indeed, the fulfillment of Torah mitzvah satisfies these needs. And that's unbelievable. That's a tzaddik she'ena gamer, that he has spiritual needs. As it says, whoever is thirsty should come to the water. Whoever is thirsty for God, come to the water, come to the Torah. So a tzaddik is always thirsty to fulfill the thirst of his soul. That's a tzaddik she'ena gamer. So the prophet's words prove this point. where he's addressing those who are thirsty for Torah. He needed not to explain how nor direct them to waters. Well, whoever is thirsty for Torah will find it readily available for the study. Rather, the prophet is addressing those who are thirsty for God, advising them for the sake of this thirst for him through Torah, which binds one to God. So the men of ascent, that's Bnei Aliyah, the men of ascent, that was the word I was looking for. The men of ascent, however, whom I have been discussing, are beyond this level of divine service. They do not study Torah or perform mitzvahs with the intention of quenching their own thirst. They don't care about themselves. For such service is a subtle sense, self-serving. So imagine for a tzaddik, the service of a tzaddik, she'ein hagav, is self-serving. And that's how high. That's why the Zohar calls a tzaddik gomer men of ascent, because even servicing God to quench their godly souls thirst for God is also self-serving to them, as it's motivated by one's desire for a certain spiritual profit, namely the bliss of closeness to God. And by a tzaddik gomer, he's not interested in himself. Now look at it. Pirish b'takunim, as it's brought down to Tikunim in the Zohar, it says, Eizu chassid, who is a pious man? Hamaschassid in kainai, one who's benevolent towards his creator. And the Zohar says, in kandilei. In Tikkun Zohar comments, kainai, usually translated as his creator, is here to be interpreted as his nest, in kandilei, derived from the root kan, nest. And thus, a chassid is who is benevolent to his nest, meaning his source, God. This benevolence towards God consists of he's benevolent to his nest, to his source, which is sources of the soul. That's all his purposes. Candidate, to bring God to the world. It's not about him. It's not about what he's going to gain. It's not about his service. It's about the God connecting to the world. It's something you need to think about and to go over, because it's a very, very high level of tzaddik gomer. It's extremely a very deep person, very godly person. As it's brought down in the Zohar, Parshas Kitzetzei, Kibrod ishtadol basar avui ve'emu. A tzaddik gomer is a man, a son who exerts himself for his father and mother, who he loves him more than himself, more than his own nefesh ruch neshama. He loves God more than himself. And he sacrifices his life for the sake to redeem them, should they be held captive, as explained in other places. So such is the divine service of men of ascent. It is wholly altruistic, motivated only by the desire to please God and make his presence felt. It's about God, not about me. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to explain the two affirmation interpretation of the term men of ascent, according to each other, are in fact complementary. In Kabbalistic axioms, that is the elevation of man, initial mayim nukvim, feminine waters, affects a corresponding descendant of mad, mayim duchrin, masculine waters. It's a little Kabbalistic. So the shem man is a simple, it means an elevation from below is the elevation of masculine, feminine waters. The descent from above is masculine waters. So is mad. This means the arousal of the feminine level, the recipient, which in case the efforts of man below, we are the recipient. So if the recipient arouses himself to serve God, in his actions direct upward towards God, that's in Kabbalistic terms, that's called asarusa dilatata, an awakening from below, causes a reciprocal arousal of the masculine level, the giver, that causes an awakening from above. An expression, kamayim upon him, as the face reflects the face. So the way a human being awakens himself from below, that's the way it's responded to him from above. This is a general principle in Chassidus and Kabbalah, that the importance of the avodah, the importance of man's service, the importance of us doing our service here below, because the way we do our service in this world, that's the way it's reflected in the upper worlds. So that's, in Kabbalistic terms, the elevation of man, feminine waters, the awakening from below, because we're the receivers. We are in this relationship between God and the Jewish and us. We are the receivers. God is the giver. So we are the receivers. When the receivers don't wait for the giver, but the receivers awaken a desire in the giver to give, that's the way the Eibishter wanted it. The Eibishter can give without us awakening up that desire, because he's a giver. But the Eibishter wanted a relationship, and therefore God wanted that the human would awaken up, so to say, within him to give. And then it becomes a real relationship. It's not just a giver and taker, but actually it's both. I'm giving something too, because I awoken within the giver to give. So without my service, the giver, so to say, would not give, or he would give, but he would not give in a face-to-face situation. He would just give because he's a giver, but not because I asked him or I awoken within him the aspect of giving. This concept it has many ramifications, and you're gonna come to it in many aspects in Chassidus, in the importance of man's service. Because the truth is, who cares about, if God's the giver and he has everything, so what does he need us for? I mean, that's a general question. I mean, what does the Eibush need us? He has everything. We cannot give him nothing. So what does he need us? So then we become a non-entity, and that not the Eibush wanted that we should be an entity, that we should feel that not only we're receiving, but we are creating the receiving, so to say. So, and that happened in the beginning of creation. It says God created all the trees and everything, but he waited for man to pray for rain to bring it out actually into reality. So Adam and Rishon had to come and pray for rain, and then it rained, and then the trees came out. So even though God created the trees and everything before, we learned this in Rashi and Bereshis, that even though God created everything before, but then he waited for man to pray for rain so that it should rain and then bring it out into reality, even though it was all there already. It was all created before man. But the Eibishter wanted that man should have a part in actual bringing out the blessings that he has, that he wanted for the world. So applying this to the service of men of ascent, we find the following, that aspect in their service mentioned in the first interpretation, that they elevated evil and converted it to good, constitute an ascent of man. So they ultimately have that power. That's why tzaddikim change the world. Because they have the power, because they're such godly people, they have the capability of transforming the world. Most of us have the capability of subjugating the world, focusing the world, but a tzaddik actually can change the world. The aspect mentioned in the second interpretation, that the service of love, they draw God's presence upon the earth, constitutes descent of mad. So the tzaddik in essence, can accomplish both things. They can change the world, elevate the world, which is the concept of man, and they can bring down God's descent to the world, which is the concept of man. So they have both the sarusa de la tata, because they're human beings like anybody else. So they are the ultimate human being, so to say, who has the capability of transforming the world, elevating the world. And they are Bnei Aliyah. They are godly people that have the capability of bringing God to the world. So that's why also you have an expression that Moshe Rabbeinu was Ish Elokim. And the Gemara says, Ish Elokim, he had two entities. He was man and he was Elokim. He was godly and at the same moment, the ultimate man. The ultimate purpose of man is Asarusa Latata. Man is the coming from below. You also have that expression later, we'll see in the Torah, when God says, I'm going to come down the mountain and you're going to come up the mountain. Or better, you come up the mountain and I'll come down to the mountain. So Moshe Rabbeinu, God says, come up the mountain. You uplift the world. And now then, when you'll uplift the world, I'll come down to the world. Moshe Rabbeinu uplifted the world and also brought the Eibishter down to the world. Moshe Rabbeinu was Bnei Aliyah. Moshe Rabbeinu was a tzaddik gomer. He had the capability to uplift the whole world. He went himself up the mountain. He uplifted the entire Jewish nation. And he brought down, Vayeder Hashem, he brought down to the Jewish nation. Brought down God to the Jewish nation. So you accomplish both the uplifting from below and the descending from above. And bringing them together. For the purpose of God, for the purpose of the whole creation. So this is the whole thing. Thus, the two interpretations are complementary. Since the ascent of man is that causes the descent of man, since the concept of the tzaddik elevating, transforming the world is the reason why the Eibishter comes down to the world, because they go together. The Eibishter says, the way you're going to elevate the world is the way I'm going to come down to the world. So in a simple term is, I do the same thing in a much lower level. The way I make a vessel for God in this world is the way that God comes into the world. I make a better vessel, I have a better revelation. I make a weaker vessel, I have a weaker revelation. So it's all up to the way I create the space for God in the world. I create a bigger space for God in the world. God comes into the world. That's the famous statement of Kotzker Rebbe, who said, where is God? Where you let him in. So the way I let him in, I create space for God in the world, is the way I have the revelation of God in my existence. Selfless, these great tzaddikim create an unbelievable space because there's no selfishness in their space. They have basically taken themselves out. When I could take myself out, there's all space. The problem is, most of the time I can't take myself out, and I'm taking a lot of space. So the Eibishter he's cramped. He's pretty cramped. He doesn't have space to move. If I can become selfless, if I can take myself out of the space, then I can have total space. Very deep concepts, very beautiful concepts. So that's the greatness of these people, that they both together, because that's total selfless, That's why there's total revelation. That's why he's saying, going back to Moshe, it says Moshe Kibel. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest receiver, the greatest receiver and the greatest giver. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was total onav. He was total selfless. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu received and gave. There was nothing, there was no bumps on the road by Moshe Rabbeinu, by Moses. He was total receiver, total the capability of elevating himself to receive and to give, because there was total selflessness. There was no personal agenda. And both interpretations of what these people are, they go together. The Alter Rebbe says that they can elevate the world and that they can bring God to the world. They go perfectly together. They go perfectly. Understand this concept? They go perfectly together. Because through their avodah in this world, their service in this world, that they refine the good, the found in Klippas Neged, the men of ascent, do by converting the animal soul, which is derived from Klippas Neged, to good. One elevates feminine waters man, and that's the tzaddik has unbelievable capabilities to elevate the whole world, because since they're totally selfless, they're totally doing it for God. Everything is batal. They have the capability of elevating the entire world to its essence. And what happens when you can do that? When Nasi Yechudi Elohim affects union under the higher realms, to cause the masculine waters man to ascend to the world. That the masculine waters are the waters of kindness that flow down into the 240 mitzvahs, which are the nature of kindness or benevolence in the masculine waters. Now you understand why it's tzaddik. By him, everything is good. Because everything is God. No, how can if everything is God, everything is good? They can sweeten anything. They have the powers to sweeten anything that's in the world. Because if they put themselves aside, they only do it for the sake of God, then anything is bottled. The second, everything that comes into their way is totally nullified. Because once you do everything for God, everything else is nullified. The second I do it for myself, the Yetzer Hara says I'm as big as you. Even your godly selfishness, I'm bigger than you. And the Clipper says I'm just as big as yourself. If you think what self is, I'm bigger self. But it's not about me. It's about God. So there's no challenge. There's no challenge. There's only opportunity. And that's why the term masculine water applies to the mitzvahs, means that the mitzvahs draw down godliness from above, from the higher realms downward, so that God's holiness be clothed and revealed in the lowest realms. In our physical world, explain the wealth with this tzaddikim can accomplish very easily, very extremely, very fast. As explained elsewhere, thus the two interpretations in the term men of ascent are complementary because they actually both work. So that they love God, and through the love they change the world. That's why they bring down they're called men of ascent. The great people have the capability to bring down a light of God that's unbelievable to this world. And that's the greatness of a tzaddik gomer. That's the greatness of a true righteous person. As Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moshe Rabbeinu was, and so too great tzaddikim throughout history that were totally b'nei aliyah, that totally were there for the sake of God and ultimately transformed the world, elevated this world, and also brought godliness to this world. And that completes the Tanya of the day. Beautiful Tanya, very deep Tanya. And today is the 17th day of the month. As we move through the month of Tevet, today's 17th day, the chapter of Psalms of today, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. So 83 to 87, and you would do the chitas of the day. I wish you all a wonderful, beautiful, happy, and healthy day. And hope to see you all tomorrow at 8 o'clock as we'll continue the chitas of the day.